Hello everyone, I'm J-Town. Thanks for stopping by. And originally I wanted to make an art-related video, just make a whole video just talking about art. But the more I thought about it, and when I got down to actually writing the script for this video, no matter which direction I took the conversation, it kept feeling unfulfilled. There was just way too many talking points, and I would be glossing over way too many things to try and cover here. And honestly, some of those points deserve their own video. So what I decided to do is go simple. I stuck to the old motto, write what you know, so instead of talking about art, I felt it was simpler for me to just talk about why I make art. I will be recapping a couple things from my earlier video, I Was That Art Kid, but if you want to watch the full story, go check it out after this video, it's right there. Now let's get to the big question. So why do I make art? If you are an artist, sooner or later, you have to confront yourself as to why you continue to make it. Personally, why do I try so hard when it comes to making these silly little drawing videos? Why do I insist on creating things? Why do I put so much time, effort, money, and resources into something that will most likely not get anything out of it? And it's hard to be an artist sometimes. It's hard to find recognition, respect, or to even be compensated for your work. The whole struggling artist is a stereotype for a reason. And for non-artists, it's hard to understand why we put so much dedication into our craft. Many of them see it as a waste of time, or it's a very privileged thing to be able to do, or it begins and ends at just making pretty pictures. So if you ask me, why do I make art? Let me answer that by telling a story. It all started when I was born. And then fast forward to around age 7 when I was in kindergarten. I was like any other kid. I learned, I played, I made friends. But even back then, I was already being called an artist. When you're at that age, it's kind of hard to stick out. You're just like any other happy-go-lucky kid going to school. And I was too. But there were places where I unintentionally shined. And that was during arts and crafts. Listen, I don't know how else to tell this story without sounding incredibly narcissistic, but it's the truth. When it came down to arts and crafts, the other kids just messed around. They smeared paint, scribbled with markers, and they broke crayons. They were having fun, and they were just happy to get out of learning 2 + 2 = 5. However, even at that young of age, I was built different. I noticed behaviors in myself that I didn't see in other kids when it came down to arts and crafts. There were simple things such as I colored within the lines, I colored in shapes instead of scribbles, and I used appropriate colors for whatever I was making. I guess when it came down to arts and crafts, I just had a little more intent than other kids. And when it came down to hanging them up on the wall, everyone can see it. Kids and teachers pointed out things like, "Wow, J-Town, yours turned out really good. Wow, yours looks so cool. It looks just like the real thing. You're like an artist, J-Town. Can you draw me something?" Without a doubt, this always happened every week when we did arts and crafts. And it continued into elementary school and when I went into higher and higher grades. However, this was all before I really began to enjoy it. It was something I was good at, yeah, but it wasn't something I particularly enjoyed doing yet. It was a trait or a talent like being the fastest kid on the playground. It was a part of me and it was something I was known for, but it wasn't something that I thought I was or I wanted to be. It was around this age where watching Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon cartoons was my lifeblood. Seriously, some of the happiest, earliest memories I had were in front of the TV on Saturday mornings watching action cartoons like Teen Titans, Ben 10, Pokemon, Naruto, the Powerpuff Girls, Avatar. These are the shows that shaped my early childhood. Like any kid that probably watched hundreds of hours of cartoons, eventually I wanted to be able to draw the characters that meant a lot to me. I didn't want my enjoyment of the show to end right when the episode ended. And it was right there, in that moment where I drew Spider-Man or Pokemon for the first time, that was when I fell in love with art. Suddenly the shows, the characters I adored, I wasn't stuck only seeing them once a week on a specific day, now I could see them whenever I wanted. What it meant for me, it was bringing what I loved closer to home. They weren't stuck behind a TV screen anymore. They were anywhere I wanted them to be. I had the power, and I was the one that brought them there. And for years after that, I was just obsessed with creating as much fan art as possible. I made a fuck ton of fan art, and I drew on whatever I could. I wanted to make artwork for every cool thing I enjoyed. I made tons of fan art of Cartoon Network characters, superhero movies, Transformers, anime, video games, everything that I personally enjoyed, I wanted to make work from it. It was around when I was 11 years old where something clicked and I had a realization. You know how people nowadays use the phrase canon event to describe a universal but mundane experience that we all have? Yeah, but I feel this is the closest thing I have to an actual canon event in my life. It wasn't big or flashy, but this simple little thing changed how I viewed myself and what I thought was capable of from then on. Okay, just listen. When you're young, you don't fully understand how the world works. You have a greater sense of imagination, and that being said, I truly believe that things like Pokemon and Spider-Man were real. That characters like the Ed Boys and Samurai Jack, they were out there somewhere in the world living their own lives, that they were as real as me. I mean, I saw them on TV all the time, so they must be real, right? I know. Truly wonderful the mind of a child is. I don't remember exactly how I discovered this about myself. Perhaps I was lost in my own thoughts or daydreaming like I always did back then. But eventually, at around age 11, I realized that the cartoon shows that I loved, they aren't real. Of course they weren't real. They were made up. Someone made them up. Someone worked on them. Someone created them. And you'd think that this realization would shatter the mind and imagination of a young, innocent little boy. Like the curtain was lifted, you saw that there was no magic, and that it was all just a trick, and you saw how it's done. There is no Easter Bunny, there is no Tooth Fairy, there is no affordable housing, and there is no Queen of England. But having that realization honestly made those characters and cartoon shows that I love so much, it made them feel more real. Not in the sense of, oh, of course they're not real, they're just cartoons made by an animation studio that's run by a network, of course people worked on them. No, the takeaway that 11-year-old me had was, wait, you're telling me that someone drew Spider-Man before it was ever a TV show? And that someone had to draw him on paper like what I do? You're telling me that I can make my own Spider-Man, I can make my own superheroes and my own characters, and someday, if I work hard enough, I can have my own TV show where I can share it with others so that they can enjoy it just like I have? Yippee! I better get to work! And ever since then, I just kept creating. People have been calling me an artist practically my whole life. Doing art is something that I'm good at, and it was something that I grew to love and share with others. My idea of the kind of artist I've always wanted to be has changed over the course of my life. In my previous video, I talked about how during high school, I just loved doing character designs for my friends. And I've gone through phases of my artistic journey. At one point or another, I wanted to be an animator, a cartoonist, an illustrator, and more recently, a graphic designer, a concept artist, or a storyboarder. Whatever it may be, I want to create for the sake of creativity and sharing it with others. And I still hold on to that dream that 11-year-old me had of someday creating my own superhero and sharing it with others to enjoy. Watching Saturday morning cartoons and the excitement of returning to school on Monday just so I can talk about it with my friends was so fundamental for me growing up. My ultimate dream is someday to create something like that. And it's the reason why I make art as often as I can. Why I strive to improve and work towards doing bigger and better things. All of my efforts are that so that I can be one step closer to making that dream happen. And honestly, I'm proud to say that I've actually made progress in fulfilling that dream. I've made the first few crucial steps into making that reality happen. Art is my form of personal expression. It has given me passion, fulfillment, the drive to push forward, and the confidence to rise to the occasion. There were so many things about art I would have loved to talk about, such as art fundamentals, stylization, art versus design, comparison, self-improvement, or topics such as how the world loves art but doesn't necessarily love artists, or how art is viewed by someone who doesn't make art, and so many other aspects I could have talked about, but it was just way too many, and I wanted to cover something that was close to home. I wanted to share a bit of my experience and my journey being an artist. Sorry guys, I just couldn't help but make this whole video about me. I still hope you enjoyed it. If you made it this far into the video, comment below if you're an artist and why do you make art. Go watch some of my other videos. Thanks for watching. I've been J-Town, and I'll see you guys next time.